There I am. Hey everybody. So I had to jump on. Now I have shared the RSU 24 school board meeting quite a few times in quite a few different places. However, I did not see the entirety of the school board meeting until this morning. And so I wanted to share, because usually like what I do is I go in, I drop, I call it, I say, I toss the grenade and then I get the heck out of Dodge, right? And so I'm going to show you the video clip of the school board meeting where I speak, and then the next speaker comes up and refers to me. And then I'm going to tell you why everything that he said is untrue, unfactual, and just deceptive.
Ministries. I stand before you, a man who never had a childhood. Trans ideology destroyed that. My life was stolen by the lie of transgenderism. The movement that calls itself inclusive and loving targeted me, desensitized me, groomed me, and sexualized me as a child. Molested by 2 teachers. One was a part-time guidance counselor that told me I was a pretty girl. Age 13, I overdosed on pills. Age 14, I ran away from home, was sex trafficked by the transqueer movement who loved me only to victimize me. I contracted HIV/AIDS at 14. Began to destroy my body with wrong sex hormones. I was the suicidal trans kid, always tossed into these debates when someone's trying to push this agenda. I sincerely believed I was a girl trapped in a boy body. Lived as a trans woman for over 20 years. Everyone around me thought I was happy, being my true self. Inside, I was confused, broken, and depressed, because transition and affirmation does not take away suicidal ideation or depression. It only makes it worse. Suicidal ideation is emotional blackmail. Wrong sex hormones left me sterile with osteoporosis, heart issues, and mental health complications by age 30. They ravaged my mind and my body. They caused irreversible damage. I was a ticking time bomb because of the path trans ideology put me on. By the grace of God, I've been healed of much, but some scars remain. I watch in horror as schools destroy children, secret social transitions, affirmation without therapy, exposure to explicit ideas to sexualize young minds, and the promise that hormones and surgery can fix what's inside, maiming the body for a head issue. This is not compassion for children. This is dangerous. This confuses and destroys, leaving broken souls in its wake. Schools are not equipped to play doctor with children's bodies and futures. Behind the back name changes and policies that hide truth from parents are not care. They are betrayal. And I beg you, protect these babies in the way no one protected me. Say no to grooming to the trans activist teachers, and put truth first. Put parents first. These children are only regurgitating the propaganda and lies that they've been force-fed by the transqueer activists. Do not let another generation of broken, confused children be led down the same road of destruction as I was. I know this cult inside and out. And I know this: any man that defends or pushes the transqueer agenda is suspect of targeting and preying on children. God bless you all. Are there any questions?
Up next, David Wida from Bucksport.
I feel like I was just verbally attacked.
He feels like he was just attacked. Good. Good. That means that I represented the truth well, right? Because the truth is, I don't care about his thoughts and feelings. I don't care about his thoughts and feelings because his thoughts and feelings are not aligned in truth. His thoughts and feelings are irrelevant. Only the truth is relevant.
Because I am a person who has been advocating for the LGBTQ community for 47 years. And if trans children are not allowed to express who they are, that's erasing them. And with the cuts to DEI, what we're seeing is the entire LGBTQ community is being silenced. So I hope anybody in the position to take action will really read the facts. The gentleman that spoke previous to me, I have sympathy for his personal situation, but for every trans person who is feeling like they did the wrong thing at the wrong age for them, there are thousands of people worldwide throughout history Magnus Hirschfeld.
Okay, so I had to stop it there because if you notice, he doesn't finish that thought. He says there are thousands for every person that that detransitions, basically every person that decides that they've done the wrong thing. There are thousands of others throughout history. But he doesn't finish the thought because one, it just wouldn't be true. So I'm going to back it up and let you hear it again. And then I'm going to talk about what he talks about Magnus Hirschfeld.
That's erasing them. And with the cuts.
And there is no such thing as a trans child, okay? That's a lie from the pit of hell. That child who is trans identified is suffering from underlying issues and complications and vulnerabilities and trauma and so on and so on.
To DEI, what we're seeing is the entire LGBTQ community is being silenced. So I hope anybody in the position to take action will really read the facts. The gentleman that spoke previous to me, I have sympathy for his personal situation, but for every trans person who is feeling like they did the wrong thing at the wrong age for them, there are thousands of people worldwide throughout history. Magnus Hirschfeld did the first deep research around transgenderism and sexual orientation. And in 1923, I don't have the notes in front of me, his entire library of research was raided from his Institute of Sexuality, raided by the Nazis and burned in the streets. I bet everybody in this room has seen the video footage of a big bonfire with books on it. That was Magnus Hirschfeld's full research library of sexuality and human sexual orientation, including deep research on the occurrence and prevalence of all kinds of gender identities as well as transsexualism. Let's not go back to the point where the Nazis were trying to stifle and hide the truth about human sexuality.
You know, you have to love the propaganda. And I'm being facetious. You don't have to love it because you have to hate it. But the propaganda of trying to guilt and shame people. Please, let's not go back to being Nazis. And so, what this individual, because I don't think I can actually call him a man. But what this individual has refused to tell that school board and everybody listening is that Magnus Hirschfeld's property was destroyed because he was a deviant child predator and that he did experiments, like surgical experiments on the vulnerable, the most vulnerable, especially youth, like most of those people, right, who push, promote, protect, or encourage the transqueer agenda. They burned his filth, hallelujah, and the current agenda of the transqueer cult should also be piled up and burned down and stomped out of existence. Why? Because these people need clarity. These people need healing. They don't need any more mental deviant teachings, no more burdens upon them, no more trauma, no more traumatic experiences. They need freedom and healing. Because Magnus Hirschfeld, what he didn't want people to talk about was a demented sexual sadist. Okay, he ran an institute for sexual science. And within the walls of this institute, they had a museum of sexual torture devices. The lady, quote unquote, lady of the house was a very young male, at least 30 years or more younger than Hirschfeld. So this young man was not only sexually abused by Hirschfeld, but he later took his own life. He later committed suicide. The LGBTQ cult doesn't want to talk about that, right? They don't want to talk about the facts of, like, they try to praise Magnus Hirschfeld and Benjamin, Dr. Benjamin, and Alfred Kinsey and Dr. John Money and all of these people, but they don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you the facts. Hirschfeld began attempting sexual reassignment surgeries in like 1920. And the first was him castrating a male. And then in 1922, he did a double mastectomy to a female. And all of these surgical procedures he was doing, what he was trying to accomplish a sexual reassignment surgery. And so by 1930, Magnus Hirschfeld, he tried to create a false vagina on one of his patients. And that ended up with the patient suffering greatly for 18 months before dying. Okay. So for 18 months, his patient suffered and wanted to die, but eventually died of just the infections and all of the things all of the complications that come along with those surgeries. Even today, the complications come along with those surgeries. Hirschfeld was a sick, perverted deviant. He was also a pederast. He preferred very young and effeminate males for sexual pleasure. It was Dr. Harry Benjamin here in the U.S. that coined Hirschfeld as the Einstein of sex. And then he brought Magnus Hirschfeld to the United States to travel around and to speak to groups of other perverted doctors and scientists about his sexual scientific studies. So while Hirschfeld was doing these lectures, he didn't tell them all, right? He didn't talk about his last patient that was actually at the time suffering greatly back in Germany. And I'm sure that he didn't go back and tell him that his patient died, right? So he only said that the surgery was successful. That's all he talked about. He kept telling them that the surgery was successful. He didn't talk about the complications, the pains, the issues, the suffering that the patient endured. It just seems like that tactic, right, has survived the test of time, since it is what the trans clinics and the trans clinicians and doctors do now, right? They mark clients as happily transitioned, even the detransitioners or the ones who take their own lives or the lives of others and then their own life, right? I mean, we can look at the last how many trans shooters. So Dr. Alfred Kinsey. So we see Magnus Hirschfeld was a pervert, right? And then Dr. Harry Benjamin, a pervert, brought Magnus Hirschfeld over. But Dr. Alfred Kinsey was Dr. Harry Benjamin's idol. So Benjamin idolized Kinsey. Kinsey was a mad scientist pedophile who raped and tortured children from the age of 3 months old and up to prove that children were quote unquote sexual from birth. And so this is where the entirety of the sexual revolution came from. It came from Alfred Kinsey. And there are graphs and there are studies that you can find online by looking up Alfred Kinsey, or look up Table 34, or just look up the Kinsey Institute and pedophilia within the sexual revolution. So, and I also have a stream where I air the Boys of Table 34 on my YouTube channel. So you can go to my YouTube channel and search the videos for the Boys of Table 34, or whatever happened to the Boys of Table 34. So Harry Benjamin idolized Alfred Kinsey, brought Hirschfeld to the USA to lecture to these doctors, to these scientists here, right? So the goal was to make highly experimental and dangerous mutilation of genitals and scientific experiments on human beings, right, to be more readily available here in the US. And that was the goal of Benjamin bringing him here. So then Harry Benjamin went on to create this team, right, an associative team that later became, guess what? WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. So when Benjamin began the research team that later became WPATH, one of the men on that research team was Dr. John Money. Money was another pedophile who actually coined the term gender, and he used Hirschfeld's research and lectures to do so in an attempt to prove that gender identity and your actual sex could be two different things. Now, we know that not to be true, right? But John Money described himself as, and this is like his description of himself, he said he was a bisexual, polyamorous nudist. He also endorsed pornography to heal broken marriages. He also endorsed pedophilia. He was not only a pedo apologist, he was actually a pedophile. Money also tried to make a claim and endorse his quote unquote research that wives should accept their husbands having incestuous relationships with their children to relieve herself of being the sole sexual outlet for her husband's desires. This is like the absolute sick and perverted, should be criminal. None of this stuff should be published anywhere. None of this stuff should be being taught anywhere. And John Money, known as the godfather of the transgender movement, is most famous for the horrible, horrendous, disgusting experiment that he did on the Reimer twins, Bruce and Brian. And so you can look up Bruce and Brian Reimer. You can read all about that horrible case that he did. Or you can just look up the John Joan case, and that's what the case was called. The research was called in Dr. John Money's research. So he also, like, gosh, you really should look up the Reimer twins, because Dr. John Money destroyed the entire Reimer family with his perversions, with his lies, with his deceit. He preyed on those twin boys for deviant sexual pleasures and the pleasures of other pedophiles and deviants. The father fell into deep depression. The mother turned to infidelity and alcoholism. And both of the twin boys actually committed suicide after years of sexual, mental, and emotional abuse at the hands of Dr. John Money. So gender, like, and so Dr. John Money is the one that coined the term. He didn't create it. Like, I think that was Magnus Hirschfeld. And so, or no, maybe it goes back to the Volkov guy, but gender was coined by Dr. John Money. And so what a lot of people don't really grasp or understand is that gender was always related to grammar, right? There's an old saying that says, words have a gender, people have a sex. And so gender was around and being used in like the 14th century, but always related to grammar. Languages have a gender. People have a sex. So not long after the all of this was going on with Hirschfeld and okay, so I'm wrong. I think it's like the 1500s or the 1950s. I'm sorry. Did the word gender start being used synonymously with the word sex? And there was absolutely no mention of gender in any medical records, no medical books until I think 1955. And that's when Dr. John Money introduced the term gender roles. And that's when he's trying desperately to prove his perversions as facts. And so when the transqueer cult uses the term gender, they say it's a mindset, right? Or they say it's a feeling, or it's a thought, or it's a whatever, because there's absolutely no boundaries for thoughts and feelings, especially of those who have mental illnesses, mental disorders, mental issues, and mental challenges, which cause them to want to dissociate from self, become something that they're not, and not dealing with their trauma. And it also has been a very safe place, or shall I say, trans identity is a refuge for many of the most deviant, dangerous sexual and criminal deviants in society. And we see that with all of the men who are guilty of heinous crimes against women and children that are claiming a trans identity and then being placed in women's facilities, locked in a cage with a woman after being an abuser of women and children. I mean, it's horrendous. Like, you cannot make this kind of stuff up. And so truth versus facts, right? Because truth is truth. There's only one truth, okay? But there are facts, and facts can change according to the person, right? So, and I say that because, and I want you to think about this. I'm 3 foot tall. You are 9 foot tall. We both walk into a room that is 9 by 9 by 9. You say, this room is tiny. This is a cramped room. I can't be in here long. And your perception, that's a fact for you, right? Me, I'm 3 foot tall. I'm walking in saying, this is a big room, and that's a fact for me. So this is why truth isn't subjective or objective, right? Truth is truth. There's only one truth. But because the truth of that situation is that the room is 9 by 9 by 9. So just because your thoughts and feelings or your perception of something isn't in line with other people's doesn't mean that the truth changes, right? So males can never become females. That's the truth. Yes, they can have their genitals mutilated by surgeons. Yes, they can put lipstick on and a wig and go out and pretend. But the truth is, males can never become females. I mean, so we have to like know the difference between truth and facts. And we also have to know that just because our thoughts and feelings make us feel a certain way doesn't make it true. And it doesn't make it reality. Thoughts and feelings are influenced by atmosphere, culture, society, perversions, right? So I just wanted to get that out there because I thought that this, like, I hadn't seen the school board meeting online. And then I watched it, and I was only going to take my clip out and toss it up online. And then I was like, I saw the guy coming up after me. And so I listened. I was like, okay, so he feels like he was just verbally attacked because I just told the truth, right? That's one thing that nobody can do is debate me or my testimony or my truth because it's the truth, right? And so it's what I lived and it's what I know very, very well. And so I think that that's something that we have to understand because trans ideology destroyed my childhood, right? It stole my entire life. The movement that calls itself, loving and open and caring and compassionate and inclusive and diverse, and that's the movement that targeted me. That's the movement that desensitized me, groomed me, sexualized me, victimized me. I mean, this is the truth. And this is what this agenda is set up for. And I meant what I said at the end of my testimony. Any man that stands up for, protects, pushes, encourages, or celebrates the transqueer, the LGBTQIA transqueer cult, agenda, movement, whatever you call it, is suspect of being a predator, of targeting and preying on children. And that does make them a predator. And they have either already committed some kind of crimes with one of these young people, or are suspect of being able to do it. That's just the truth. There's no doubt in my mind that there is no man out there that pushes and promotes and protects the transqueer cult that is not a deviant, that is not a predator, and that will not, if they haven't already, that will not violate a youth. Plain and simple. With that said, I'm out of here. Y'all have a blessed day. Peace.